reacting to a chimpanzee documentary, and make sure you guys subscribe and make sure y'all comment too so I could know what you guys want me to react to up next. Wait, what? We're on the United States. About 9 million miles from the United States, another war was being fought. What the fuck?
Roaming across the dense forested hills in Gombe Stream National Park in Tanzania, chimpanzees live in territorial communities, dividing themselves into groups of 1 to 40. In the north you had the Kasakila, and in the south the Kakombe and the Makenka. A few years prior to 1974, territorialism between these groups was witnessed by Jane Goodall, an English primatologist and anthropologist who had been researching chimpanzees in the area since the 1960s. Chimpanzees were known for their territorial behaviour, but Jane and researchers never thought to the extent that would soon become apparent. In fact, prior to 1970, chimpanzees were considered friendly and peaceful. The ensuing war would be the first time that any chimpanzee had been seen to deliberately kill a fellow chimp, but not only kill, but do so callously and then celebrate afterwards. Before the war, we must go back to 1971. In 1971, the alpha male leader of a chimp community called Leakey died. With Leakey's death, the community needed a new leader. Humphrey, a strong male chimp who almost killed a researcher, Dr. Wrangham, by hurling a large rock at his head, became alpha. But Humphrey was no Leakey, and over time the community began to turn sour. 2 chimps in particular started causing trouble, brothers Charlie and Hugh. Over the next few years, the whole Gombe group would divide itself into 2, those who supported Humphrey and those who took Charlie and Hugh's side. Charlie and Hugh were their community.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Damn. 6 against 7. Yeah, that's 5, that's 2, 3, 3. Yeah, damn, bro.
Headed south to form the Kahama, consisting of brothers Hugh and Charlie, Godey, Dee, Goliath and Sniff. While Humphrey stayed in the north with a larger part of the original group and became known as the Kasakila group, consisting of alpha male Mike, Satan, Sherry, Everett, Rudolph, Jomio and Figan. Nothing out of the ordinary in the animal kingdom. First blood was drawn by the Kasakila. Humphrey, Figan, Jomio, Sherry, Everett and Rudolph headed south and ambushed Godey of the Kahama, whilst he was alone feeding on a tree. Godey was pulled from the tree with force and thrown to the ground, then viciously beaten with a huge rock. He managed to crawl away from his attackers, but he was never seen again. After Godey had been defeated, the victorious chimps celebrated boisterously, throwing and dragging branches with hoots and screams that echoed throughout the forest. Over the next 4 years, the Casakila carried out merciless attacks on the Kahama group with no real reasoning. Since chimpanzees are at their most vulnerable whilst feeding, due to the fact they usually eat alone, preferring not to share food with friends and family for the most part, the Casakila hid and waited for these moments of feeding before attacking the community. After Godi, Dee was taken out next, and then Hugh. The eldest male, Goliath, still remained and was targeted next. Goliath had shown peace during the Casakila's attacks and taunts. However, his kindness was not reciprocated, and he was killed. With only 3 males remaining, Charlie, Sniff, and Willy Wally, Charlie was killed next. After his death, Willy Wally disappeared and was never found, and the last remaining Kahama male, the young Sniff, survived for over a year. For some time it seemed as if he may escape into a new community or be welcomed back to the Casakilas, but there was none such luck. Sniff too fell to the Casakila warband. Once all the males in the Kahama had been picked off, the Casakila needed to deal with the female chimps. Of the females from Kahama, 1 was killed, 2 went missing, and 3 were beaten and kidnapped by the Casakila males. The Casakila then succeeded in taking over the Kahama's former territory. By the end of 1978, the Kahama group were no more. Their females and their territory belonged to the Casakila. Never before had anything like this been seen in the wild. But there was no happy ending for the Casakila community. A much larger group of chimps, the Kalande community, moved into their space, and the Casakila were no match for them. They retreated back to their original territory where they had come from, handing over the Kahama area to the Kalande.
Another war.
The 4-year war amongst the chimps showed us a side to these primates that had never been observed by humans. We thought calculated violence was only reserved for us humans. The attacks were not random. The chimps calculated their killings and did so with an aggression never seen before. Despite being incredibly groundbreaking, Jane Goodall's years at Gombe had a lasting effect on her. The things she saw during the Gombe War were likened to witnessing a human conflict, and Jane was left profoundly disturbed by the 4-year war. She later told that she struggled to come to terms with this new knowledge, often waking at night to horrific pictures of Satan, one of the chimps, cupping his hands below Sniff's chin to drink the blood that welled from a great wound on his face, or visions of old Rudolph, usually so benign, standing upright to hurl a 4-pound rock at Godi's prostrate body. Or Jomio tearing a strip of skin from Dee's thigh. Figan charging and hitting again and again the stricken, quivering body of Goliath, one of his childhood heroes. Those were Jane's words of the barbaric war she witnessed in what was the first recorded incident of lasting warfare among primates. But Goodall's research at Gombe Stream didn't just shed light on chimps' aggression. She also challenged 2 long-standing beliefs of the day: that only humans could construct and use tools, and that chimpanzees were vegetarians, a belief held before the 1970s. Jane witnessed and watched in awe as the chimps of Gombe systematically hunted and ate smaller primates such as Columbus monkeys. But not just hunt, but do so with communication and strategy. They would block all the exits for Columbus monkeys, then one chimp would be assigned to the job of going in for the kill. Once the monkey had been caught, the chimps would go nuts, ripping it to pieces and sharing it amongst their community. This alone was a major scientific find that challenged previous conceptions of chimpanzee diet and behavior. While observing one chimpanzee feeding at a termite mound, she watched him repeatedly place stalks of grass into termite holes, then remove them from the hole covered with clinging termites, effectively fishing for termites. The chimps would also take twigs from trees and strip off the leaves to make twigs more effective, a form of objective modification, that is, the rudimentary beginnings of toolmaking. Humans had long distinguished ourselves from the rest of the animal kingdom as man the toolmaker. but this proved that this was no longer the case. But the most harrowing account of all was the fact that the chimpanzees were using tools to inflict damage and death, hurling rocks and sticks at their fellow friends. It showed Jane and all the researchers a side to chimpanzees that had never in the history of the world been witnessed, in what became known as the 4-year Gombe Chimpanzee War.
But yeah, this will be the end of this video. Make sure you subscribe. I mean, it's free, so you might as well.